like, what is their definition of what consciousness is? It's like, so the thing that we're calling conscious or consciousness, if they're saying it's an illusion, like, what do they think the process of creativity is? What the process of cognitive function? There's something going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of double talk because they will admit they have it, but when they say it's an illusion, I think what they mean a few different things by it. But there is no point in the brain where you can, locate consciousness. It's a global phenomenon. So it's something that emerges from this harmonized collective activity of, 80 billion neurons interacting. And they also mean that consciousness doesn't have any causal power. And by that, I mean they don't think that your conscious thoughts actually do anything in the world. Like when you decide to raise your arm, they think it's just the brain is getting sensory input and there's algorithms encoded in the brain, and then that's creating a behavioral output, almost like this reflexive machine, like an automaton.
So how are you aware of this output? What is that?
So basically they say consciousness is what's called an epiphenomenon, and that means that it's there, but it's not doing anything. So they admit that we have conscious experience.
But if they're saying it's there, but it's not doing anything, it's still there.
It's still there.
It's real. So like if you're moving because of an algorithm, but you realize that you're moving because of an algorithm, isn't that conscious?
Yes. So it's kind of a ridiculous thing that they call it an illusion, and then other materials might say it's not an illusion, it's an epiphenomenon. So yeah, there's lots of confusion there. But the question about so let's say we all accept consciousness in the practical way of talking about things.
Let's say we accept consciousness as in human beings, without the double talk.
Yeah.
What if we go back to single-celled organisms, do we believe that they were conscious?
So it's a really complicated topic, and I argue in the book that single-celled organisms probably are not conscious, but they are these information processing systems, these computational systems. So they do have some type of intelligence or cognition. You see a difference in the way any living system behaves compared to an inanimate system like a rock or a trash can. Those things don't do anything. If you see a rock move, it's because like a gust of wind pushed it.
Right, but couldn't the same be said for trees? Except you're looking at slow motion, you actually do see them move.
Well,
so you see them grow.
Trees. I'm arguing that the difference between life and non-life is that living things are these information processing systems, and that would apply to trees too. So they're doing photosynthesis, and yeah, they might not move the way like a mammal or some other organisms do. They're very slow, but plants will perform something that's analogous to what I explained about bacteria doing chemotaxis. They swim towards food and away from toxins. So
the roots grow towards water.
Exactly.
Allocate
it's
resources.
called heliotropism. Yeah. So a plant will track the sun in the sky. So it has some sort of abstract model of its environment. Some sort of statistical mapping of the environment is encoded in organisms, and it gives them this quality that philosophers call agency. And so agency is kind of the defining characteristic of life. Living systems pursue goals, intrinsic survival goals, while inanimate systems don't.
So consciousness is an integral part of living systems.
Yes, but you can have living systems, I'm arguing, without consciousness. That consciousness probably emerges with brains.
What do you say about the way plants react to things, the way they react to predation, the way they react to even the sound of predation? Do you know about those studies?
So yeah, they're definitely intelligent. They're definitely communicating using electrical signals and chemical signals. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're having a conscious experience. So do you think that plants have this actual subjective perspective? Is there an observer there experiencing something, or is it a system that philosophers call a zombie system? And basically, you will have like intelligent behavior without actually having subjective experience.
Is that just a guess, though? I mean,
that they don't have it?
Yeah.
So what I argue in the book is that basically to have a self, to have an observer or an I, some sort of witness to this experience, it's not good enough to just store some sort of model of the world. The model has to start modeling itself. And that brains create mental models of the world, but in that process, the individual and the brain is part of that world. So then it starts to model itself, and it's this phenomenon of the system kind of looking back on itself that creates a witness to experience, an observer. So to answer your question, yeah, it's kind of a guess. You know, maybe someone could argue that very simple life forms do a very simple form of self-modeling. The biologist Michael Levin would argue that, and that could be right. But I think we can reasonably agree that it at least starts with life. But I do think it probably, requires some more sophisticated information processing, modeling machinery, and that it's most likely to be in systems with brains.
And when we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about consciousness. First of all, we're talking about consciousness in terms of the way human beings view consciousness. But when you get into other animals, at what point? I mean, is it a function of avoiding predation or becoming predators? Is it a function of foraging for food? Like, what is it that enables consciousness to emerge?
Yeah, so it's all those things. So an organism must be able to anticipate events in the environment if it's going to survive. And it must be able to, as we said, like capture energy if it's going to evade this tendency towards disorder. And so it has to model the world.
Right.
And consciousness is a mental model. So if you close your eyes, you can imagine yourself in this room. You can zoom out and you can see the whole building. You can zoom out and imagine how Earth looks from outer space. You can imagine your friend and what kind of personality they have, what jokes they tell. So you've modeled all of these things in the world, and you've even modeled other modelers. And it's this modeling that is necessary that leads to the phenomenon of consciousness.
So when you're talking about consciousness in the universe, do you think that consciousness is a property of the universe that enables things to happen? Do you think that there's a reason why we have this incredibly advanced version of what we accept as consciousness? Like, are we designed for something? Are we building towards something? As the universe gets ever and ever more complex, are we a part of that? Because this is like a part of the whole system?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on what scale you want to talk about. You can talk about the brain emerging and consciousness emerging to model the world, to find solutions to these survival problems. But if you zoom out and you look at the big picture, you see that basically the universe and the matter in the universe is starting to wake up when life emerges and you have conscious agents. It's the matter in the world that's starting to experience the world. So you could look at this process of increasing complexity, that is this sort of cosmic scale evolutionary process, as the universe itself coming to life or even waking up. So Carl Sagan has this famous quote. He says, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." And this book takes that statement very seriously. It says it's not just poetry. Literally, the